Can an economy really grow on paper while citizens grow poorer? As Nigeria's rebased GDP figures spark applause in official circles, the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria strikes a contrasting note, warning that statistical growth without real production is a mirage. The world is watching closely as this tension between metrics and material reality unfolds in Africa's most populous nation. In a recent appearance on the morning show, the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria tackled what it called a dangerously misleading narrative about the country's economic health. Following the release of rebased nominal GDP data, which showed an apparent jump in Nigeria's economic size, made it clear growth on spreadsheets means little if factories are idle, inflation is raging, and unemployment is rising. This revelation has ignited fresh debates around how developing economies are assessed globally and whether international institutions are enabling false optimism through numbers that detach from local realities. As inflation, currency devaluation, and import dependency continue to plague Nigeria, this GDP rebasing controversy could trigger wider regional and global scrutiny. The story goes beyond domestic politics. It's about how developing economies are measured, perceived, and ultimately governed in a world driven by data. GDP rebasing refers to updating the base year used to calculate a country's economic activity to reflect more current prices and market realities. Nigeria recently rebased its nominal GDP, resulting in what appeared to be a significant economic expansion. While technically accurate, this rebased figure has been met with skepticism by real sector stakeholders, who argue it paints a distorted picture. The key criticism from Man and other analysts is that nominal GDP increases do not reflect real productivity, industrial output, or improvements in living standards. In fact, the manufacturing sector, the real engine of sustainable growth, has been shrinking under the weight of soaring production costs, epileptic power supply, FX instability, and policy inconsistencies. This divergence between macroeconomic data and microeconomics hardship isn't unique to Nigeria. It mirrors similar debates in countries like Argentina, Ghana, and even post-pandemic economies in parts of Europe. The rebased GDP becomes more of a cosmetic recalibration rather than a meaningful indicator of progress. The numbers may impress bond markets and external investors, but for ordinary Nigerians, it doesn't change the price of bread or the availability of jobs. The Manufacturers Association of Nigeria emphasized that economic progress cannot and should not be equated with statistical improvements in GDP. Instead, they urged policymakers and analysts to focus on key real sector indicators such as capacity utilization, industrial productivity, export volume, and local value chain development. One of the most alarming points raised was the disconnect between government macroeconomic indicators and the ground realities faced by businesses. Despite GDP growth on paper, many manufacturers are either shutting down, downsizing, or moving operations outside Nigeria. Rising energy costs, scarcity of forex for imports, and port inefficiencies have made it nearly impossible for manufacturers to survive, let alone thrive. This sentiment was echoed in the World Bank's own cautionary note that without structural reforms, Nigeria's statistical growth risks becoming an illusion. Real growth, they argue, must trickle down through improved employment rates, better infrastructure, lower inflation, and enhanced ease of doing business. Until then, GDP numbers remain abstract for the millions still grappling with food insecurity and eroding purchasing power. Nigeria's economic credibility is crucial not just for its 200 million citizens but for the entire African continent. As the continent's largest economy, Nigeria's figures heavily influence regional forecasts by the African Development Bank, IMF, and World Bank. If those figures are misleading or overly optimistic, it creates ripple effects across Africa's borrowing capacity, investment climate, and foreign aid justifications. Furthermore, the international community, especially trade partners like China, the EU, and the US, are increasingly demanding transparency and real accountability in economic reporting. For multinationals looking to invest, discrepancies between statistical optimism and on-ground stagnation are red flags. There's also a humanitarian aspect. Development organizations rely on macroeconomic indicators to determine funding priorities. If these indicators are inflated or misleading, real human suffering may be obscured, leading to misallocated resources and ineffective interventions. In a world driven by algorithms and analytics, numbers wield enormous power. But as Nigeria's GDP rebasing saga shows, numbers without context can be dangerous. Man's intervention is a timely reminder that economic health must be measured not only by upward trends on graphs but by downward pressure on poverty, inequality, and business failures. As the debate continues, global analysts, policymakers, and citizens must ask harder questions about how economies are evaluated and for whom they are really working.
Ought to be. Where were we coming from? When we had the last rebasing, manufacturing, for instance, took about 28% of this economy. Today it's about 21%. It shows that manufacturing are strong. How will manufacturing not shrink in an economy where Kadi himself came out to say that the devaluation of the currency and in currency issues, they lost close to $1 trillion, the manufacturing sector. The issue of power has not been solved. You can see now the power authorities are saying that I think around the Ikeja disco for over 20-something days that they will not have power. But you see, that's why when some people argue that, remove the energy sector subsidy, privatize the energy sector, people must pay cost-reflective tariff. 25 days now, no power. Is there any sane country that happens? There's going to be load shedding. I'm sorry, I didn't get the facts right. So please, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I'll put a caveat there. If I don't have the empirical, if I don't like to talk. But there's going to be electricity disruptions. Let me just put it that way. From 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Despite the fact that people are paying for band A. So you have put that premium on people paying for band A. How do you want factories to be able to work effectively? And that's why when I say the problem with the electricity sector in Nigeria is cultural, and some idealists think that once you pull out all the subsidies and people pay cost-effective tariffs, the industry will stabilize on its own. And I say it doesn't work like that. It's a case of vindication again. So you can see those problems. All of these are weighing on the manufacturing sector. Forex issues, all of that. And also, the minimum wage, even the cost of money itself. You can see how the conversation went for the minimum wage because we say manufacturers should pay minimum wage, but where's the productivity in the economy? An economy that has gone from over 300 billion to now 246 billion despite rebasing, it shows lackluster productivity, very tepid growth. Then when you now look at the factor of logistical interplay, because what is the basic question of economy? What to produce, how to produce, for whom to produce? For whom are we producing? People that have no money, no economic fecundity, that you've halved their lives because of devaluation, that inflation is eating up. How to produce? How do you produce? Where electricity is not stable, tariffs are up, there is pain there, there's cost of vandalism. Where are you producing? Lagos? You know what the rent is like? So all of these factors are put together. They're affecting the manufacturing sector. Hence, you see the level of shrinking. Yes, people like NECA have said it's good to rebase, at least we know the true value of the economy. Other economists have made the argument. But like Man did say, it just shows that all is not well in the sectors of the economy. So what should the president do? Economic injection, economic fecundity. These are the people we should look at because these are the people that are pushing the level of the economy. The president, a couple of years ago, gave a speech where he said he was going to put some money aside for those in some sectors, entrepreneurs. I think billions of naira worth of loan. I don't know if he has given them the money. Secondly, providing conducive environment for them to be able to sell their wares. How easy is it going to be with conducive environment? With multiple taxation. If you carry a truck of produce from one part of the country to another, do you know how many touts, tongs and people from all sorts of inclinations or leanings will collect taxes from you on the road. Informal taxes. How has the president stopped this? And that's what he should do to be able to bring about, that's what they're saying, ease of doing business. How is it easy to navigate through government bureaucracy? Try going through government bureaucracy. You need a permit from government. Do you know how many people you have to grease their palms or walk through? So these are the problems, and these are the solutions. Because therein also lies the solution. So man, a pivotal part of the economy, have made their stance known as regards this rebasing. It has shown that we don't have prospects yet. It has shown that despite the fact that they talk about growth is tepid. It has shown that there's no direct correlation on the lives and the affairs of the people. And people are suffering. SBM Intelligence did a report recently even by, and they discovered that it would take you 40% of the minimum wage to cook a pot of jollof rice. As we speak today, you know the import waiver that the government gave, that cap is fast wearing out. Rice now is going close to 100,000 naira again in the markets. So you have all of these pressures, and that's why man is saying all of this. The question is, what are we going to do? Incentivize farmers, help them. Where are the tractors that you bought in from Belarus? Have they started working? Where's the food?
Okay, yesterday I had a long session on This Day Live, the Sunday talk show, with Professor Franklin Ungu of the Public Sector Initiative Program at the Lagos Business School, Pan-African University. And so we looked at it in great detail. Now, the first thing to note is that rebasing is not necessarily about cost of living details and all of that. It's simply to give a reflection of current realities in a particular economy. The last time Nigeria rebased was in 2014. The UN Statistical Commission says you rebase within 5 to 10 years. However, the irony that we have here, which the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria is pointing out, is that, look, this doesn't show that there is any growth in the economy. And I think that the controversy comes from the fact that the Bureau of Statistics and government spokespersons have said, oh, there has been an increase of 3.13% year over year between 2024 and 2025. Whereas in 2012, GDP rebasing gave the Nigerian economy 520 billion or so. Now we are 13 years later, talking about a loss of, in terms of the calculations, about 277 billion. So that in itself has caused a lot of controversy. Two, if you look at the details of the rebasing, we seem to be doing well with trade. Real estate is also doing well. Real estate is the third largest, sector. But we're not doing well with either crop production or agriculture or manufacturing. And Professor Ungu was arguing yesterday on this same station that you need to improve on manufacturing and agriculture, the real sector, so that there will be a positive effect in terms of other major indicators within the economy. Say, for example, salaries. Salaries are not even being paid. Say, for example, production. There is no significant productivity within the economy, which was the point I made the other day when we brought the issue. Now there's expenditure. Government just spends on luxury, not on real things. Government is taking loans. So there's a disconnect. However, the whole point about GDP rebasing is that, it provides data. Some statisticians have pointed out. But is it statistics we're interested in or the quality of life? And that's why you have, other people saying, look, if there is no real economic growth, if GDP per capita is not significant enough to translate into positive benefits for the people, then statistics or data will make no sense to the ordinary Nigerian. But the connecting point here is about, you have the data, what do you do with that data? How does that data translate into concrete policy? And the question is, does the present administration, does he have the capacity? Does he have the political will to ensure that connection between statistics and the reality that the hardcore economists are talking about. Definitely, Manufacturing Association of Nigeria is right. Benchmark rate is 27.5%. The cost of borrowing is very high. How many, companies in the manufacturing sector are able to borrow money and do business? Unless you have all of that in place. And then agriculture, which everybody is talking about, which was also a subject we focused on at great length yesterday on This Day Live, the Sunday Talk Show. Unless you have serious productivity at that level, feed the people, ensure the value chain is properly managed, then of course, you can't just be talking about statistics. Because while data is important, human lives are far more important. Now, let me go to the issue about Alhaji Aliko Dangote. Alhaji Aliko Dangote received in audience Mrs. Oduwole, who visited the refinery. And it was in the course of that meeting with the Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment that there was this talk about how, Alhaji Dangote was praising the Tinubu administration for supporting the private sector, for the Nigeria First policy, for the crude, Naira for crude exchange policy, and all of that. Well, even the international bodies, either it's IMF or World Bank, they've praised this administration, saying that, the economic reforms are in order, but there are still things to be done. However, Alhaji Aliko Dangote, who is investing heavily in this economy, 20 billion naira, largest single train of refinery in Africa, creating jobs and opportunities, and also, reinventing the oil and gas sector, and also helping us with foreign exchange. The question he raised is that the government should ban the import of refined products. And I think we may spend a minute or a little, less than that, to reflect on that. Now, the marketers, the other players in the sector are likely to say, this is Alhaji Dangote. He wants to be the only one that is operating in that sector. The question to ask is this. The Dangote refinery is producing in Nigeria. The basic issues in terms of this production will be volume, quality, costs. I think there should be an investigation of this, particularly by the regulator. It's not enough to just react emotionally. The people who are importing refined fuel, at what cost? What is the volume? What is the quality? And then we have a comparative analysis. And on the basis of that, we can say, maybe Dangote refinery is right. Maybe the importers are right. But I know that the majority of Nigerians say that it is more cost effective for us to produce and refine products here in Nigeria and to make the product available at a price that is convenient for the generality of the Nigerian people. That's the main economics in that particular regard. And I think that's what we should talk about instead of, people say, Dangote has come again. No, we should look at the issue, volume, quality, cost, and do a proper comparison. And that is for the regulator to wake up and operate as a regulator, not as, newspaper or, roadside beer parlor, people responding to the issues at stake. And finally, still talking about the private sector, where today is the birthday of the Group Managing Director and CEO of Fidelity Bank, Dr. Onyeka Onyali Ikpe. And we wish her a very happy birthday. But I'm sure... yes.
In fact, it was Liboros's birthday last week. He has sent his implications. Implications are coming.
He's coming today.
He's coming today.
We're having fun.
So you have implications ready for
the Fidelity people, they were in
Shomas.
Ogun State over the weekend.
Yes.
Doing SME and all that.
Yes.
I think that's some implications.
That's
but if they do other implications in terms of jollof rice and pepper soup, anyway, congratulations.
Ogunites.
But congratulations to the GMD CEO of Fidelity Bank.
A very happy birthday to her. She's such an inspiration, truly. Right, like where do we begin? Let's begin with the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria's response to conversations happening around GDP rebasing. And for me, the most prominent part of that statement was something that we've carried through as a theme in our conversation around this GDP rebasing, which is the fact that industry numbers have declined, which is a huge source of concern for an economy that is not yet fully industrialized. Now, I've been following an economist. He's with the University of Cambridge, I believe, called Justine Haig, and he focuses and concentrates on issues around industrialization. And what I love that he says is that industrialization in this era that we're currently living in is actually a matter of national security. That's why you see the shifting global dynamics at the moment. They're all centered around industrialization and reindustrialization, and how countries are now seeking to protect their markets because they've realized that industrialization, the manufacturing sector in a country, is a very big key to a nation's prosperity, as a generator of revenue, as an employer of labor, and of course, de facto, as something that upholds families and households. So a very serious look needs to be taken at our industrial policy locally. Does it protect national security? The sachet economy that we've gone into and we thought would just be a sachet economy for just a short period of time seems to become deeply entrenched, and it seems to be getting worse. So yes, as much as the manufacturers are running on their last legs, they're creating sachet produce as opposed to scaling up, as we should be at this point. And these are some of the key indicators and the key takeaways, I believe, from the issues that are brought up from rebasing. You look at countries like China and Vietnam, even South Africa, the reason why they're having a headache over the United States tariffs is because their economies are industrialized, because they're exporting manufactured goods. So these changes in the global dynamics affect them. A country like Nigeria, for example, is not really having much of a headache because we don't have the manufactured goods at that scale that we're selling to the world. Many people would argue that what Donald Trump is doing, albeit in a very controversial way, is attempting to reindustrialize the American economy. He's trying to get manufacturers, factories jump-started and going, because it is now understood that, yes, as much as one aspires to have a service-based economy, it means nothing if your industrial sector, your productive sector, your manufacturing sector is dormant, or if it's shrinking in size. So I think there's a very urgent look that needs to be made at industrial policy, how we can jumpstart it and how we can protect it. A perfect example are the concerns that have been raised by Alhaji Aliko Dangote. You have an industrialist, a manufacturer, somebody who's adding value to a raw product in the Nigerian economy, who is saying that, well, the conditions in the marketplace don't favor me as a domestic producer. Now, while I'm weary of the word ban, I think banning is always a little bit, it should always be a policy of last resort. I think that this is where tariffs come in. I think that it's important to say that if a finished product is being imported into this market, there should be a tariff placed on it because it's already available locally. So if you opt to go and import it, then you should be paying a premium to go and import it. And those who are buying at the fuel station should also be given the choice to say, I want to buy Nigerian or I want to buy the imported one at a premium price. In most fuel stations around Africa, if you drive to the pump, you have the chance to choose between blended or unblended. And that's a very important distinction that needs to be made, because the allegations that are being made here are similar allegations that are made in the rest of the African continent, that there's blended substandard product that's being brought in. No problem. If it's being brought in, if the regulator has decided that it has a place in this market, then let the consumer know. Let it be the consumer's choice.